Good morning. Our universalist heritage proposed that each person is made of divine goodness. Science offers that we are stardust. Whatever your beliefs, know that you are a gift, inherently worthy of love. You are a gift, and we are glad that you are here. Love is the spirit of all souls. In this moment of our shared journey, may you feel witnessed and honored wherever you are on that journey. Let us now greet our neighbors, especially new or returning members with our guests with our names and pronouns. Good morning. Welcome to all of you who are here with us in the moment and to those who will be catching us later on. I'm Emily Salinas. My pronouns are she, Asia, and I will be serving as your worship associate for today's service. Together with Nancy Olson, our Director of Congregational Faith Formation, Gabe Perbieri, our music director, pronouns he, him, and Liz Elmore, our collaborative pianist. We are pleased to welcome our guest preacher this morning, Reverend Dennis McCarty. Reverend McCarty is Minister Emeritus at the UU Congregation of Columbus, Indiana, and he has served congregations in Indiana and Florida. He writes novels, nonfiction books, magazine articles, songs, and plays, and of course, lots of sermons. Writer's Digest magazine honored his 2018 book, Reflections on Time, Culture, and Spirits in America, as one of the best self-published books in the period 2018 to 2023. He just released his first CD, Falling Fire, and sometimes tours a one-person version of his play, Servetus, the Radical Reform Musical. His book, A Gadfly Report, examining Unitarian Universalism's reactionary fringe, has been recognized as an information resource on the background and opposition to the UUA's recent Article 2 revision. So thank you. Again, we are very glad to have you, Mr. Reverend McCarty. Of course, people of all ages are joyfully welcomed in service. However, there is nursery care that is available if that works better for you. You'll find at the end of your pews what is called a connection card. I invite you all to please complete this card. It's a great way to let us know if you would like some support, need assistance, you have new contact information, or just have an interest, comment, or question. You can place that in the offering basket. We do have a few quick announcements today. If you are interested in providing input on how adult faith formation is shaped within our congregation, know that Nancy Olson will be meeting in the library at 11:30 with anyone who would like to have this discussion, to be a part of this discussion. I believe our green team, do we have green team members here today? We are meeting today, correct? All right, so they will be meeting as well at 11:30. And are we hosting somebody? Yes, Grace Van Lehman from the Spirit Place. And so we have two meetings. Again, meeting with Nancy to discuss adult faith formation and our green team. As we begin our time together, we acknowledge the land itself and those who have sustained it through the generations. We are upon the unceded land of the Lenape, Myaamia, Kaskaskia, Shawnee, and Kickapoo people who were pushed from their land and whose children have been stolen for generations. As we strive to be a community of justice, may we continue to find ways to make reparations, notice any current parallels, and act accordingly. Thank you.
On this heir to a billion mornings, we gather as a community of blessing and challenge. As have our ancestors down the ages, let us reflect on the greatness which lies all about us. Let us seek insight into our own mysteries and the currents of the world about us. Let us teach, learn, inspire, and be inspired, and then, having reflected on all this sacred text of human experience, may each of us find ink and paper to write our own footnote.
Ada is going to light our chalice. Thank you, Ada. So this ritual of lighting our chalice reminds us to continually renew our promises. Our promises to put love into action, to live out this community of love and justice that we certainly aim to be. If you would please rise in body or spirit as we share the words printed in our order of service. They're both in Spanish and English. If you're with us online, we always like to know in the chat where you are lighting your chalice from. Let's say the words in Spanish first. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor, y ayudarnos unos a otros. Este es nuestro pacto. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. And you could stay standing, please.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are gifted love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our voices in each other's eyes. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
We're going to sit here. Come on. Ada and I have a story for you today. It's called The Rabbit Listened, and it's written and illustrated by Corey Dorfeld. One day, Taylor decided to build something big, something good. Something amazing. Something Taylor was proud of. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice.
Cluck, cluck. What a shame. I'm so sorry. Sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck.
But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear.
Rawr! How horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. Rawr, rawr, grawr.
But Taylor didn't feel like shouting. So the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do.
Trumpada, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were.
But Taylor didn't feel like remembering. So the elephant left. Next, then they came one by one. The monkey that was the hyena that looked like a monkey.
Hee hee, let's laugh about it.
The ostrich that looked like a flamingo.
Go, let's hide and pretend nothing happened.
The tiger who looked like a kangaroo.
Tisk tisk, what a mess. Let's throw it all away.
Then came the snake.
Shh, let's go knock down someone else's.
Oh, but Taylor didn't feel like doing anything at all with anybody. So eventually they all left. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit.
But it moved closer and closer.
Until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together, they sat in silence until Taylor said,
Please stay with me.
The rabbit listened.
The rabbit listened as Taylor talked,
The rabbit listened.
as Taylor shouted.
The rabbit listened.
As Taylor remembered and laughed.
The rabbit listened.
To Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else.
Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again.
I can't wait, Taylor said. It's going to be amazing.
The rabbit listened. So maybe we all, as we go out into our day, can remember all these animals who had their agendas and their particular ways of being, and maybe we can remember our little rabbit and how he listened to Taylor. Thanks. Ready?
And now please join me in taking a few moments to note that which is currently bringing joy or sorrow to our community. We'd like for everyone to know a great joy. The Salvo Keeney Bainey family welcomed Oakland Dawn Joy Keeney on June 26th. And so although Oakland joined the family 5 weeks early, mother and baby are doing well. And let us now hold a moment of silence together for the joys and sorrows in our hearts that are yet unnamed.
Our reading this morning is from the Routledge Handbook of Epistemic Injustice, but I'd like to start with just a line or two from one of my favorite theological magazines, Scientific American. A recent Scientific American article noted that, quote, objectively speaking, we are living through a dumpster fire of a historical moment. And the article goes on to say, we need to guard against lowering our standards for normalcy. We must stand up for the silenced and stand with the silence breakers. We must double down on our duty to know, to speak up, and to remember. Which brings us to this book, the Routledge Handbook of Epistemic Injustice. It's a big academic book full of really long words, but it really comes down to the illustration on the cover. It's a person holding up their hand, and it says, listen. Just what the rabbit did, listen. In this era of information and communication, issues of misinformation and miscommunication are more pressing than ever. We need to remember to ask who has a voice and who doesn't. Are voices interacting with equal agency and power? Who is being understood and who isn't? And who is being believed? And who is even being acknowledged and engaged with? Epistemic injustice refers to those forms of unfair treatment that relate to issues of knowledge, understanding, and participation. These issues include a wide range of topics, concerning wrongful treatment and unjust structures, including the following: exclusion and silencing, being treated as though you were invisible, having your meanings or contributions systematically distorted, misheard, or misrepresented, and several others. The topic of epistemic injustice is a very rich one in at least three ways. The first is that it brings together many topics, debates, and traditions and philosophy. The second is that epistemic injustice connects to major social and intellectual movements such as feminism, hermeneutics, critical race theory, disability studies, and decolonializing queer and trans epistemologies. In sociology and sociological terms, it's very intersectional. The third source of richness for epistemic injustice lies in the fact of its status as a pervasive feature of our social and professional lives. In other words, it's everywhere you look. Unfortunately, the socio-historical context of the European philosophical traditions, what some people call the Western Enlightenment tradition, is rife with epistemic injustices, many of which have affected philosophy itself. Epistemic justice might therefore require not just closer engagement with philosophical traditions and ideas from the wider non-European world, but also critical thinking and self-examination, a task informed by feminist, post-colonial, decolonial, and critical race theories that might offer not only pluralism and perspective, but also epistemic justice. And I promise to translate all that into English in a few minutes. But first, I invite you to stand in body or spirit and sing Spirit of Life or Fuente de Amor, and we'll sing the Spanish words first.
stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
And I'm going to begin with a troubling story. Back in 1993, two young black men were waiting at a bus stop in London, England. 6 white teenagers on the other side of the street began to shout at them. One of the black men, Dwayne Brooks, got scared and began to run. And then, to Brooks's horror, the young men charged across the street, caught Brooks's friend, Stephen Lawrence, and stabbed him to death. Police quickly arrived, and I believe the officers did intend to solve the crime. They had good intentions, but they assumed they already knew what had happened, a gang fight. They assumed that rather than being victims of deadly violence, the two black men had been participants equally responsible for the violence inflicted upon them. And while the police were interrogating Dwayne Brooks, Stephen Lawrence's murderers got clean away. Witnesses came forward to explain what had really happened, and it turned out that the white gang had been on a rampage attacking black people that whole evening. Even so, 20 years went by before the murderers were even brought to trial. And it was so messed up, Parliament called for an inquiry. And they found that the officers had violated their own written procedures. They had failed to provide aid to the crime victims. Dwayne Brooks had tried to tell them what happened, but they ignored his information. In philosophical terms, Brooks was a knower, K-N-O-W. He knew what had happened, but because of bias against him as a black man, police refused to listen. And the inquiry found that the root cause was, of course, entrenched structural racism in London's police force. And with structural racism, like a lot of structural isms, good intentions are not the problem. But officers did not allow people of color respect as knowers due to their own biased feelings, which many officers may not have even realized they had. And this sort of thing happens all the time, of course. On both sides of the Atlantic, black citizens in the United States complain that they are treated differently by police, by other agencies, and even by the medical establishment. And scientific research, back to Scientific American, scientific research has confirmed that those complaints are, in fact, accurate. Nor does this kind of unequal treatment apply just to black people. The same prejudices play out in various forms for all people of color, as well as for gender nonconforming people, people with disabilities, and still, all too often, for women. Feminist philosopher Miranda Fricker tells this story about Dwayne Brooks and Stephen Lawrence as an example of what she calls testimonial epistemic injustice. Epistemology is the study of knowledge, how we learn, what we learn, and in this case, what we think we know that is just not true, but which prevents us from finding out what we need to know. Testimonial epistemic injustice. Those are big words, but they describe a common part of the human experience. The human brain uses unconscious shortcuts all the time to process input and make decisions. We couldn't get through the day without automatic reactions. But because we do this unconsciously, we too often find ourselves acting on cultural assumptions rather than facts. And in the case of the Stephen Lawrence murder, biased police assumptions that this had been a gang fight because black men are all violent prevented them from listening to the real facts about the crime. The police had good intentions, but good intentions don't mean much without accountability. Unitarian Universalism is a strongly covenantal tradition, but I submit that our covenantal declarations are not worth much without accountability. Now, to pursue this concept of covenants a little farther, Unitarian Universalist theologian James Luther Adams taught that a covenant is a sincere ethical promise willingly entered into by equals, and it is rooted in love, not law. Violation of a covenant is a problem then, not because it breaks an enforceable law, but because it is a violation of trust. It is a breach of faith. Covenantal relationship is rooted in love, not law. So, if we're talking about love instead of law, what does accountability even mean for us? And to me, accountability means this: we need to listen, particularly to people who were treated unfairly. This might be an individual in an unequal relationship or a whole population. People of color, LGBTQ plus people, people with disabilities, and let's not forget children, old people, and women. That's all testimonial epistemic justice is. Pay attention. Listen, particularly to the voices it's most tempting to ignore. There is another kind of epistemic injustice, what Miranda Fricker calls hermeneutical epistemic injustice, and that's harder to explain in philosophy, but it's still important. In philosophy, hermeneutics is the science of interpretation, and Fricker applies this to knowledge and information. Knowledge and information can very much be justice issues. For example, suppose the people in a poor section of town don't have the information they need to register to vote. If they don't, then their right to vote has, in effect, been taken away. And that lack of knowledge is hermeneutical epistemic injustice, and therefore working to provide that information is hermeneutic justice. One more subtle example of hermeneutic injustice comes from Miranda Fricker herself. She writes about the beloved American novel and the movie made from the novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, as an example of testimonial injustice. A black man, Tom Robinson, is accused of assaulting a white woman in 1930s Alabama. Both he and the novel's hero, Atticus Finch, explain to the jury how that could not possibly have happened, but the racist jury refuses to listen to them. That's testimonial injustice. But To Kill a Mockingbird itself and the way Fricker herself uses it are also a subtle yet powerful example of hermeneutic injustice. For the record, film critic Roger Ebert savaged that movie because of the way the movie and also the book treated its black characters. They have no purpose of their own other than, as Ebert puts it, to act as props. Quote, as he writes, backdrops in a story about a brave white liberal, Atticus Finch. Close quote. Now, this assessment of both the book and the movie still surprises some people even today. And when I first preached about it in the early 2000s, I got strong pushback from a lot of people. It was very difficult to explain convincingly the kind of self-righteous liberal racism that pervades both the book and the movie. And in her writing on epistemic injustice, Miranda Fricker also fails to recognize that structural racism. She was writing in 1997, for the record. Then came groundbreaking black film director Spike Lee, who coined language to explain what was going on. The black handyman, Tom Robinson, is what Lee calls a magical Negro. The magical Negro is only there to help develop a story about the white hero. In To Kill a Mockingbird, once Tom Robinson has fulfilled that function, the plot conveniently kills him off. And none of the white characters worry much about that. He was never more than a prop. His death doesn't really matter to the book's main point and the movie's main point, which is the coming of age of the main character, Scout Finch, the girl. Meanwhile, Atticus Finch, the brave white lawyer, is what Spike Lee calls a white savior. The black townsfolk in the story cannot help themselves. Both the novel and the movie apparently assume there were no black lawyers in the 1930s, so the white hero has to bravely step in to try to save Tom Robinson. Now, for the record, there were black law schools and black lawyers. They might have, for example, have asked future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. He was, during that novel's time frame, just starting out as a crusading civil rights lawyer for the NAACP. A black lawyer would have totally changed the plot, maybe with Atticus Finch as an assistant. The book and the movie never thought of that possibility, probably because in 1960 they'd never heard of Thurgood Marshall. And magical Negroes and white saviors are now recognized as racist cliches. But when Ebert wrote his review, and later when I was trying to preach about it, that language didn't yet exist to explain those concepts. And Miranda Fricker herself didn't pick up on it. And that's what hermeneutic injustice is, a void in information and knowledge and even language to explain a justice issue. Now, for the record, To Kill a Mockingbird is a wonderful book, and it's a fine movie, and both were arguably as anti-racist as they could be in 1962 and still get accepted at all. Looking back, though, we can now see them as examples how something can be anti-racist on one level and yet, speaking from a totally white viewpoint, reinforce racist perceptions on a deeper level. And we're learning more about this stuff all the time, and that's what hermeneutic justice is. Which brings us to something else Miranda Fricker talks about, which is essential to epistemic justice, what she calls the right to contest. The right to contest, the right to be heard if you believe you've been unfairly treated, or if you feel you're being denied information that you need or being denied a right to participate. The right to contest, she tells us, fundamentally changes a relationship. The more powerful person in the relationship may have good intentions, but they will act differently if they know they're accountable for their actions toward the less powerful person. Intentionality requires good intentions plus accountability. They both have to be there. Now, there's a tension between the right to contest on one side and what Fricker calls a culture of domination on the other. If there's no right to contest, you have a culture of domination. One example she uses, in the United Kingdom, a law passed decades ago that made marital rape a crime. And she explains that even in a marriage where the husband would never even think of committing marital rape, That law changed the institution of marriage. It weakened the patriarchal culture of domination and granted women a greater right to contest across the board. And I apologize that we have to juggle these big words and academic language, but as you can see, these are really basic, often deeply personal issues, and they play out every day, all around us. The new Article 2 language in our Unitarian Universalist Association bylaw says, in part, love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love, close quote. We are accountable to one another. And that brings us right back to epistemic justice, because that's what accountability is in a covenantal relationship. Practicing epistemic justice, honoring the right to contest by listening particularly to marginalized voices. And those voices have much to teach, both in society and within our own religious tradition. And we can live into the fact that there always is more to learn. I think it's easy to forget that nationwide, we Unitarian Universalists have thousands of members who are Asian, Hispanic, Indigenous, and/or Black. We have thousands of LGBTQ plus members. We have thousands of members with disabilities. And we need to listen to those experiences too. We need to listen to that knowledge. And we haven't always done that as well as we might. In an article about epistemic justice, Mexican sociologist Sylvia Schmilkus writes, quote, "The notion of lifelong, life-wide learning presupposes acknowledging the existence of very diverse sources of knowledge, many ways of knowing, and the need for dialogue as the principal method of ensuring both deep learning and personal and collective growth." Close quote. Diversity, dialogue, and personal and collective growth. Isn't that what we tell people we're all about? In other words, to honor and engage our own pluralism and diversity, that calls for epistemic justice, particularly toward members and would-be members who are outside what we sometimes view as our cultural mainstream. If I say something hurtful toward, say, a transgender person or a person of color or toward a woman, and I have done, unintentionally, but even unintentionally, they should have the right to tell me so, the right to contest. What are my good intentions worth if I don't take time to listen? And to me, that's a crucial part of what accountability means in a covenantal relationship. And to me, that is an ethical call. As a totally Northern European descended, lifelong member of the Mid-America vanilla set, I am called to be curious, to be humanly interested in learning about people unlike myself. Covenantal accountability ethically calls me to listen to people unlike myself, particularly people on the margins. Epistemic justice, if I practice that, all the pieces begin to fall into place. 200 years ago, I think we're on Channing Drive, correct? 200 years ago, Reverend William Ellery Channing was the leading Unitarian intellectual of his day, and he wrote a whole book on the hottest moral issue of his time, slavery. And frankly, it's hard to read that book today without gagging. Channing had good intentions. He had the best intentions. He opposed slavery on philosophical grounds, but he also accepted every rationalization for slavery that white slaveholders gave him. Brilliant though Channing was, it never occurred to him to ask an enslaved person what slavery was like for them. And his good intentions fell on barren ground because he was still part of an American culture of domination in which enslaved people had no right to contest, no right to describe how they felt about slavery. People are the experts on their own lives. William Ellery Channing, kind-hearted, well-intentioned, brilliant man though he was, didn't think about what an enslaved person would know about their own life that he didn't. And we 21st century Unitarian Universalists are not immune to that. The Unitarian Universalist Association had a huge blow-up over unequal hiring practices back in 2017, and I submit that it blew up precisely because people of color and sometimes women at that time had no way to contest sloppy, unequal hiring practices. It wasn't about good intentions. We had the very best intentions. But the human condition is that, like Channing, we don't know what it is that we don't know until we give someone unlike ourselves the opportunity to tell us. To avoid a culture of domination, whether it's intentional or not, I must pay attention when someone tells me how my actions affected their life. Accountability. We all need to remember to listen when someone tells us about their life. We need to help one another listen. In Scientific American Magazine's terms, we must stand up for the silenced and stand with the silence breakers, even when they're talking to us. Learning new stuff is actually one of the coolest things we human beings do. I love what happens when we take a hard look at how we've always done things and see where we could do better. In covenantal relationship terms with our own diversity, the study of epistemic justice gives Unitarian Universalists a language to express what we've been groping for the last several decades, trying to better understand marginalized experiences in the culture around us and also in our own tradition. Returning again to that Scientific American editorial I quoted, our national culture is rife with misinformation and miscommunication. And epistemic justice gives us a language how that is not okay. Our understanding of the world around us always is evolving, and we need to evolve with it. Society's biggest problems come when people refuse to adapt to new information. I'll say that again. Society's biggest problems come when people refuse to adapt to new information. 2 words: climate change. And that's epistemic injustice in a nutshell. So here's to evolution. May we continue to evolve as our knowledge and language evolve. Amen. May it be so.
Good morning, all. Today we're sharing our offering plate with the church in Covasna in Transylvania in Romania. This is one of several daughter churches, you could call them, small village churches that are administered by our partner church, which we've had a relationship with for the past about 28 years. And our partner church is in a fairly large city in Romania and Transylvania, but many of the Unitarian churches there are village churches, and they're quite small. The Kovasna Church has existed as a community for a long time, but they are trying to buy their own building now. And from the pictures that I saw, it looked like the building was in need of a lot of work. But so they're having a large fundraising effort there at our partner church to support their fledgling congregation in Kovasna. This aligns with our UU values by supporting the places, well, there are places around the world, Unitarian churches that need support of some kind because of the environments they're in. To contribute today, you can give cash or a check in the collection plate, or if online, you can go to allsoulsindy.org, where you'll find a link that says Give to All Souls Here. That would be on the left side. It's beneath the description for today's service. Please indicate if your gift is a pledge payment or if it is for share the plate, if you are paying online or using a check. Thank you for your generosity in supporting the mission of All Souls and for your continued love for one another and for this world. The morning offering may now be given and gratefully received. And I just wanted to mention that 6 or 8 of us are going in September to visit our partner church, as we've done periodically in the past. It's always been quite an experience for me and for my wife, Betty. And I think anyone who goes there gets a fairly intense cultural experience to see the differences and the similarities between our 2 churches. Thank you.
Please stand or rise in body or spirit to join us in hymn 1029 in the teal hymnal.
Love knocks and waits for us to hear, to open and invite. Love longs to quiet every fear and seeks to set things right. Love offers life in spite of foes who threaten and condemn. Embracing enemies, love goes the second mile with them. Love comes to heal the broken heart, to ease the troubled mind. Without a word, love bids us start to ask and seek and find. Love knocks and enters at the sound of welcome from within. Love sings and dances all around and feels new life begin.
In living through each moment, may we be ever mindful that we have been favored with precious gifts. We have eyes with which to peer into obscure corners. We have ears with which to listen to the stories of our fellow human beings. We have hands with which to work toward transformation. Together, surely, we are the answer that blows in the wind and rises in the sea. May we go forth in strength, faith, and joy, and may our steps soothe and bless the earth wherever we pass. Shalom, salam, blessed be, and amen.